Before we jump into today's episode, I want to tell you about something new and something cool that we just made for you. I wrote it myself. Now, here's my assumption. If you are listening to this podcast, it probably means that you want to build long-term wealth with a rental real estate portfolio, and you would probably like to do it with some creative financing. And as I talk to people who want to do that, I know a lot of questions come up, and I thought there's really no great single resource that really captures the entire picture of how that works. But I have solved that problem because I have written a new PDF that is just for you, and it's called the Step-by-Step Guide to Buying Your First or Next Rental Property Without Relying on a Lender to Approve You for a Loan. Like I said, I wrote this thing myself, and if I do say so myself, it's pretty thorough. And in this, you're going to learn a few things. I'm going to teach you about the 3 key strategies to find and negotiate quality off-market real estate deals that nobody else even knows are for sale. I'm going to teach you about what I call the yeses framework for getting off-market sellers to accept your offers. And then I'm also going to teach you the 11 simple steps that you need to take to get your first or your next deal accepted without needing to go to a bank and apply for a loan and just hope that they give it to you. So if you would like to get this free downloadable PDF, just go to rentalwealthguide.com and you can download it right now. rentalwealthguide.com and get your download of the step-by-step guide to buying your first or next rental property without relying on a lender to approve you for a loan. Now, on with the show. This is Jeff from The Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur. Welcome to episode number 33 of Sleaze-Free Real Estate Investing. This is a show for those of us who've never felt at home in the We Buy Houses crowd. In this show, we take a stand against what we call the lowbrow approach, the mainstream guru seminar distressed seller approach that ends up giving real estate investors a slimy reputation. And instead, we've discussed the strategies, the tactics, and the philosophies that we call the thoughtful way. Now, this is an enlightened approach to real estate entrepreneurship that focuses on constantly sharpening the sophisticated real estate entrepreneur's 3 most critical capabilities: seller relation skills, deal architecture skills, and opportunity vision. When all 3 of these capabilities are successfully in motion, you can make an excellent living today and build long-term wealth while creating value for everybody that you touch along the way. There are show notes for today's episode at www.thoughtfulre.com/E33. Please do yourself and do us a huge favor by hitting your subscribe button right now in the podcast app. We would so appreciate that. Now, I'm excited to tell you what we've got in store for you in today's episode. The world of real estate is obviously a huge world, and we as thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs are admittedly kind of off over in our own little corner doing things in our own unique way. But the vast majority of real estate activity in our country is, of course, conducted through real estate agents. But as real estate entrepreneurs, we don't always have the ability to relate to real estate agents very well. And that's why today I'm so excited to share with you an interview I conducted with Kevin Kauffman. Now, in the world of real estate agents, Kevin is known as a thought leader. He is also a practicing broker and brokerage owner himself. He's a podcaster. He holds large events for real estate agents and is a wealth of knowledge both to real estate agents and about real estate agents. And the more that we can understand our agent counterparts, the better and more effective we can often be in our own business, whether that's on the buy side or on the sell side or in any other way. In this interview, Kevin and I discuss a really wide range of things, from what makes a great agent to how many agents actually get involved with investing and why that might not be more. Some of the most current things, such as iBuyers that are affecting the real estate agent business today, and so much more, even including broad conceptual topics like abundance mentality and what it means to be an entrepreneur versus an investor. I hope you enjoy this interview. We're going to cue up the theme music and we're going to dive right in.
Successful real estate investing isn't all about we buy houses and motivated sellers. That's the lowbrow approach, and it gives real estate investing a slimy reputation. Gross. There is a better way, a more genuine, human approach. We are thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs, and this is Sleaze-free real estate investing.
Okay, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks a lot for having me, and I really appreciate it, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. I was excited that our schedules aligned. And why don't you just start by telling us, who is this Kevin guy?
Oh man, that is a loaded question. I got to tell you, but I'll go easy. So my name is Kevin Kauffman. I run a real estate business, kind of a traditional real estate brokerage business, if you will. My business partner, Fred Weaver. We are based in Tempe, Arizona is our home base. I say home base because we have, I guess, slightly different business where we sell real estate in multiple markets. But we've got a company called Group 4610 Real Estate Network, which is the name of our real estate team. We've been in business now for, more than a decade, I guess 12 plus years as of February 2020. And so we've kind of figured out this partnership thing. And, we help people buy and sell real estate. We run a team that is predominantly your average home buyer, home seller, the occasional investor, but we try to take things from a different approach. And so we've been doing this, like I said, for a while. On top of running the real estate team, we also together run a real estate Facebook group for real estate agents, I should say, a Facebook group for real estate agents called Next Level Agents, which is just kind of a free online mastermind, if you will. We've always sort of been out in front of the real estate industry from a teaching and giving back perspective. So when we got started back in 2008, when him and I started working together, we were doing short sales and we were teaching short sales simultaneously and just kind of giving back to our community. So that Facebook group and then our podcast is sort of how we do that now. And I guess so. That's a little bit about me, a little bit of a ramble there. Sorry about that.
No. That's good. That's good. I feel like before we get in too far, like I need to point out what feels to me kind of like the elephant in the virtual room, for your sake as well as our listeners' sake, which is that I actually teach people to acquire real estate off market, almost always without agents. So I want to just throw that out there and just sort of set that context. But I think there's a ton of intersection between what you do though and what we do. And I have this theory that I want to get to in a minute about how just possibly great real estate agents might also have a lot of the same traits as great off-market real estate investors. But we'll test that theory in a few minutes.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. I think most people, most real estate agents would probably not love that. And at the same time, I totally appreciate it. I got into real estate. This is funny. So I was, the reason I became a realtor is because I wanted to be an investor. And I was going back to school and long story short, I met this man who was a professor, kind of a part-time professor. When I found out, full-time real estate investor, part-time investor, kind of giving back to the community. And he became my first real mentor. And so one of the things I realized, luckily, that he taught me right away was that I was going to have to still work for a few years before I could actually, quote unquote, just be a professional investor. And luckily, he taught me that lesson right away. And so one of the things I thought to do was, I was like, well, if I got to keep working for a few years and I want to be in real estate, why don't I just work as a realtor? I'll just get a real estate license. That literally was the thought process I had, was like, I'm going to get into real estate to basically feed my real estate habit. And then, things happened, and we can go into that later, where my viewpoints, or I shouldn't say even viewpoints, just kind of my trajectory and my business turned and started going a different direction than I thought it would. But I approached getting into real estate as a real estate investor to begin with. So I don't really have a problem with that. I love the creative, off-market real estate, sort of non-traditional things that go into probably what you do and teach a lot of.
Yeah. It's funny that, real estate investing it's sort of a broad term. And unfortunately, it's not a term that always has the greatest connotations. Before we got started, I was saying, okay, well, here's what we are. Picture the We Buy Houses signs up on the phone pole, and then go 180 degrees in your mind from whatever that means to you. That's where we are. But unfortunately, the term real estate investing as a whole kind of encompasses all of that. And in a lot of ways, I feel like we're kind of on a mission to like reclaim a positive reputation for what real estate investing can be and real estate investors can be.
Yeah, it's funny. I I think there are some people in your world and my world for that matter. Let's just call it the real estate world that probably do things that aren't cool that you don't want to be associated with, and neither do I.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a lot that's misunderstood by people out there. So, as an example, like just you called it the elephant in the virtual room. I think there's a lot of real estate agents that would probably misunderstand why you do that and kind of take that as a shot. And there's others who'd go, yeah, I kind of get why you say that. I think it's all about viewpoint. And at the end of the day, I think that when we're helping people kind of get what they want, help them with their goals, when it comes to real estate, that's tends to be how we can help accomplish our own goals, is by helping other people. So I think at the end of the day, it's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So with next level agents, that's one of the things I definitely wanted to hear more about. After I met you, that was probably the first thing then I saw that you were involved with after meeting you, and that's a pretty big group. I mean, by my standards, it's a large group, and it seems like it's really vibrant and thriving. What do you think is what makes that group a successful community?
Gosh, Jeff, I wish I knew the answer to that. Here's what I'll tell you. Because all I know is what I think is true about that. We started that group because, and I say we, I mean myself, my business partner Fred, and we've got another partner in that group, actually from Portland. His name is Cody Gibson.
Huh.
The three of us started that group because we wanted to have a better conversation about real estate on Facebook, in a Facebook group. Meaning, the three of us were always in masterminds together. We'd always been in for quite some time. In fact, the first 11 years of my career, I was at Keller Williams Realty, and Cody is at Keller Williams Realty as well. And we were in the top 100 producers in the country in a mastermind together for years. And so him and I were used to some really high level conversations. And we had those quite a bit offline ourselves, a lot of times via text, a lot of times in person. And what we didn't find online, though, in the Facebook groups were conversations like that. Now, not that there weren't Facebook groups for real estate agents. They just weren't the conversations that him and I wanted to be involved in. And so I'm not kidding. I literally just started the group one day on a Saturday morning, and I text Fred and I text Cody, because the three of us, I had conversations with the two of them individually for, I don't know, 6 months, a year about, maybe it's too late to start a new Facebook group, but gosh, it would be nice to do it and have a better conversation than what's going on in most of these other groups right now. And so I just started a group one day, texted them both, said, hey, we now have a group. Here's the name of it. I just made you guys admins. And, we probably had 1,000 people that day. And then, over the last couple of years, it's grown to 25, 26,000 agents. Not the biggest real estate group out there by any means, but it's decent size. I think what kind of gives it that vibrance, though, even though it's not the most active group, is the fact that there are some really high level thinkers in there. There's some people that run some really big businesses that actually contribute. And it's not just the mouthpieces that are online, that are in the industry, not just the people who are out selling something that are, but actually people who are, their core business is their core business of selling real estate. And I think that goes a long ways. And we've just been able to create a kind of a tight-knit community out of it over the last couple of years since we started it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it looks like even it's transitioned, it's kind of grown and transcended just the group too, right? I mean, I know that obviously the current coronavirus situation is putting the brakes on any in-person gathering, but I know that you guys at least have been, organizing things like that as well.
Yeah. So, we should be about 2 weeks shy of our, of our event, our annual event. So we put together an event the first year we had the group. And truthfully, the idea was hey, do you think we could actually get people to pay to come to a one-day event? We won't charge a lot. We'll just try to add value. The goal was to literally, we had two stated goals, Jeff. Number one was, let's under no circumstance lose any money by doing this. And number two, I bet it would probably bring the community closer together. Like, it'd probably make it stronger. And so we did that. And we put together a one-day event. And we held it in Las Vegas. And it was cool. We had a great event. We probably had about 220 or so people show up. Another 50 or 60 people watched it online on a live stream. And a lot of feedback that we got was, hey, this is cool, but if I'm going to travel, I'd rather travel and go to a 2-day or 3-day event, not a 1-day event. So maybe consider doing that next year. And so we did. And so last year in 2019, we did it again. Put just a hair over 400 people in the room in person and just about the same number of live streams. And putting on a 2-day event for a couple hundred people, for even 400 or 500 people, is a massive undertaking, much less doing it in another city. So we were moving it to Scottsdale, and we were expecting north of 600 attendees this year, and we will not be holding that event in person in 2020 now, given the circumstances here in the early part of 2020.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that the community will be really craving, more opportunities to connect in person again then when everything kind of cools off a little bit.
Yeah. And, I'd be remiss if I go backwards for a second. I think part of the reason why that has gone so well is, number one, all of the people, I mean, we've got people that, like, they speak for a living, and some of them are very highly paid to do so. Or I shouldn't say speak for a living. Some of them do. And some of them are practitioners, but also speak and are highly paid to speak. Number one is, all of the speakers we've had at the events, no one has ever charged us a penny. They're mostly friends. Like, they're almost all, I've effectively handpicked every single speaker for what would have been 3 years in a row now, based on what's the value that they can give to the community. And the other thing was just no selling from stage.
Yeah.
Absolutely none of that. Because too many events are always about selling and not about the content, and not about giving back to the attendees. And I think that's the kind of the heart of it that people really understood was, hey, if I go and listen to the speaker, I'm going to get some really great content, not just a pitch to buy their product. And so I think that's part of what has built kept our community kind of tighter knit, if you will, and kept the people, those core people, coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So when I think back to what you said a few minutes ago about how you really first got started and your first initial mentor, and your goal to do some investing then. So how did that play out? Did you end up kind of getting into investing while you got involved with the brokerage world too? And what types of things, if any, then have you ended up doing in the investing side?
Gosh, so it's funny. I've done very little investing. I've done some. About that time, I had bought a condo. I guess I had 2 condos at that time when I first got into real estate. And I thought I was going to go heavy investing. But what I found myself in, truthfully, was, I had no money. I quit my job and had a decent amount of debt and was trying to start a real estate business. And I didn't know what it was like to be in real estate. And the market was crashing. It was May of 2007 when I got my license. And my third transaction ever was a short sale. And so what I found, though, was early in 2008, when Fred and I teamed up, started working together, we quickly started growing a business out of selling real estate. And that was when we were lucky in the fact that we had a lot of people willing to give us advice and mentor us, because we were doing a lot of giving back as well to the community by helping people understand something they didn't really understand in short sales. And what I realized is we could actually form a business out of selling real estate as real estate agents. I just thought it was, you kind of go from one deal to the next like most real estate agents do. But what I learned quickly is that you could actually have a whole business out of selling real estate. And so I think what it is just, I had this business, it was coming together, it was right in front of me, and we just kept building on it and building on it. And eventually I looked up and I realized that was my business, and there was no need for me to go try to create a real estate investing business at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, to your point from a few minutes ago, and the advice that you got, from your initial mentor there, it is difficult to just sort of start cold and go straight into just real estate investing and just do that without some other important elements of a person's business model. And, and everybody kind of goes different directions with that. Some people might be property managers to earn earned income and then do investing as a part of that. They might have a contractor's license. They might have a real estate license. They might, do a bunch of different things. I have some friends who started as appraisers, and I've got a coach, and he sort of uses this expression of having a wide stance. And when you have a wider stance, obviously you're more stable, and having some other element of what you do, whether it's have a real estate license or whatever, provides a great deal of width to your stance. And so it really does enable, I think, people to get started with investing a lot better when it's not the only thing that there's more diversification in their business model, so to speak.
Absolutely. What's funny is now is here I am, gosh, almost 13 years into my career. And now I'm starting to get a little more focused on investing. Before this started, we actually had a couple of properties under contract that ended up not closing on in another city that we were going to do. But, I think one of the things I've learned is I've built my business over the years, kind of come full circle, and I've been really fortunate enough to build a real estate business that is a business that doesn't require me to show up every day and make the phone calls and do the things and press all the buttons for us to have closings, right? And so that allows me to focus on a few other things. And while we've got some other aspects to our business, one of those things that we've flat out dedicated ourselves to adding is more investment into our business. And so I guess I say that to bring that back around. I've done some investing, not a lot, not nearly as much as I thought I would, and hoping to do a lot more now going forward as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So if you were to go into the Next Level Agents group and do a survey, what percentage of those folks do you feel like as agents have also gotten involved with investing to some degree?
I'll bet it's less than 20%. Mm-hmm. If I go into next, this is not to say that in Next Level Agents, that's, we're only the best agents in the, but there's a higher percentage of people that run businesses in there as opposed to just being real estate agents.
Yeah.
And so, so some of them have the time or the capital to do so. So there's probably a higher percentage in that group than, say, just real estate agents overall. But if you took a look at there's about 2 million licensed real estate salespeople or real estate agents and brokers in the United States, and about 1.1 million realtors, if you will. Mm-hmm. I'll bet you less than 10% of them, maybe even less than that, 5% or less, are actually quote unquote investors, meaning they've got at least one investment property, would be my guess. But that's a total guess and shot in the dark, by the way. I want to make sure I don't think I'm relaying statistics that are actually true. That's in my head.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. And that is an interesting insight, I think, in and of itself. So I guess my follow-up question there would be, for considering all these real estate agents have a front row seat to, I don't know, just obviously real estate, but they probably have a front row seat to seeing people using real estate to build businesses and to make money, and long-term money or short-term money, whether it's, rental houses or flips or commercial properties or all of those things. They presumably have kind of a front row seat to that. Why do you think more of them don't get as involved as I might expect them to?
So I think there's a couple reasons. I can tell you why I didn't get involved. And then I'll tell you why I think more of the general population of realtors don't get involved or haven't gotten involved, I should say. I know for me, for quite a while, one of the things I was focused on was really building our real estate business. I mentioned earlier briefly in the intro that we happen to sell real estate in different cities besides just the Phoenix area. And I got really focused in on the business and narrowly focused. And that was, I accept responsibility for it. And I will say kind of my primary key mentor at the time just kept telling me, just reinvest everything into this business. keep focused on it, kind of blinders on to everything else. And so for me, that's what it was. Like, I mean, it was a conscious decision not to do it. I had countless conversations with friends who are more active on the investing side of the world than I am. Where I'd leave a lunch or a coffee or a Zoom or a phone meeting or something and go, gosh, so and so's killing it. Why am I not doing this? And I would just have to say, kind of remind myself I'm focused on this, focus on building this operation. So I know for me that was the thing that kept me out of it for a long time, or at least that's the story I've told myself. And then I think a lot of other folks in our industry, a lot of people just it's no different, even though most people that get a real estate license are very entrepreneurial at heart. A lot of them are just, I'm not going to have a job. You're not going to tell me what to do type of people who get in the business. I think what happens is they get in and it's still a rat race. It's just a different rat race, or a different wheel that they're on, but they're still on a wheel and they're spinning it and they're trying to make it work. And so I think that's probably one of the reasons why a great percentage of people don't is it's not, it's hard. It's just hard to do something different. I think it's hard for people to make decisions about their future as opposed to making a decision about, I shouldn't say future. It's hard to make a decision about 10 years from now when most of your decisions are about 30 days from now.
Yeah. That makes sense. I can definitely see how, it's a different mentality. I guess it gets fostered in those two different roles. One of the things I was going to ask you about, I make this distinction between real estate investors and entrepreneurs in real estate. And I'd love to hear your comment on that, but it occurred to me that maybe the same thing could be argued about real estate agents. Do you think there's a difference between a real estate agent and an entrepreneur who happens to operate in real estate?
Yes, absolutely. So if you look at me, I'm probably more of an entrepreneur, definitely run a business, if you will. And I won't name names, but I'm friends with so many of them. I know so many people that are real estate agents. Like they help you buy and sell as an example, Jeff, let's say you came to Phoenix and said, hey man, I want to buy a new primary residence. I'm moving to Phoenix. Can you help me out? I'm going to say, yes, we can help you out, but it's not like I'm going to go drive you around and show you the houses and look on the MLS for you. You're going to work with one of the top agents that works for me on my team. And you're then going to work with, our preferred lender, or at least you're going to have the opportunity to be introduced to some really great people on the lending side. You're going to end up working with the people who run our operation and transaction side of the business for once you're under contract and all the things that have to happen there. And so I say that, so that's very much a business as opposed to most real estate agents, even most of the successful ones I know, for the most part, they're doing everything from beginning to end. They're going to show you the houses. They're going to find them on MLS. They're going to handle inspections and negotiations and all of the other paperwork that goes in transaction from once you go under contract to the time you close. And I think there's a big difference in the two mindsets. And one of the things I try to tell my friends and or other agents as well that come to me for advice, because one of the things in real estate for whatever reason is comparing numbers, right? And it's always the top line numbers. And of course I'm going to sell a lot more houses than the solo agent. I've got a team of people that are going to do it for me, that are doing different parts of the job for me. I'm not having to do everything. And so I try to tell people, try not to compare because we're literally playing a different game. I know we both have a real estate license. I know that we both help people buy and sell real estate, but we don't do the same thing. So don't compare yourself to people that are doing something totally different than you, because it's a different business, totally different game.
Yeah. I think that is that right there is such a good point I believe for entrepreneurs in general. And it's so easy for us to compare ourselves to others. And like you mentioned, there's certain industries and stuff where there's ostensibly metrics that are apples to apples, even though they're not necessarily exactly like that. But I think a lot about that exact thing when I find myself kind of getting caught up with somebody else that we are, I guess, brokerage owners versus agents are playing two different games. But then each person is sort of, hey, you're running your own race. You're you're playing your own game, and it's so easy to get caught up like comparing yourself to other people, but sort of stay in what your own focus is and not to get distracted by, what you think other people might be doing or accomplishing.
Yeah, it's like, I guess it goes back to that saying, and I wish I knew who said it originally, but don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. Like, I think that's a very natural thing for us to do, especially if whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you're probably competitive on some level if you're in business, or there's a high likelihood of it, right? And so it's easy to go, oh, he sold so many so-and-so houses, or, she bought so many houses this month. I think that's a really easy, natural comparison. And on some levels, it's even healthy, right? To help you expand your thought process of what's possible. And at the same time, like, that comparison right there can end up, I see it end up just absolutely crushing some people in my industry, and I think it's unfortunate, but it happens every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to this kind of question of the difference between, A and B. One of the things I think about a lot, and I'm just curious if this might not be something you think about very often, but see if this resonates with you at all. But the difference between being a real estate investor and an entrepreneur in real estate. How does that hit you when you hear that?
When I hear investor, I think I put some money out, or something of value out, in return, in hopes of a return, getting back more in the future. That's what I think of as an investor, whether we're talking about real estate or not. I'm not saying that's should be the legal definition by any means. That's what comes to me. When I hear entrepreneur, I hear and think either, hey, I've got an idea of a way to do something on a bigger level, or I've got something that I believe I can turn into a business. That's what I think of when I hear entrepreneur. And so maybe, and a lot of times with entrepreneur, those things may not be what's traditional. They're non-traditional, right? Like, what I didn't say to you yet is one of the reasons, the other reason too, why I'm so comfortable with with kind of teaching people to buy and sell real estate without a real estate agent is, one of the people I learned from was Carlton Sheets, kind of, the no money down late night infomercial stuff. Like, that was where I learned that's actually, I would credit him with a lot of my success in being able to complete short sales, because it was always about finding a solution. As opposed to doing things a certain way that fit in a box. We used to have a saying for it. We call it the Outback. Meaning, I used to, in fact, when I was teaching short sales in the early days, I would draw on a board this thing called the Outback, and I would draw this line and kind of show the whole industry and show how 97% of the real estate industry is done in this box. And, it's not a bad box, but it's just the box, and it's the way things are done, and it's $1 trillion industry, and it is what it is. But there's this other 3% that we would call the Outback, that was all of the other transactions or homes changing hands that were done from a place of creativity and solutions first, not necessarily fitting into a box and checking a guideline, right? And so I kind of always came from that mindset of solutions first, thinking when it comes to an individual deal.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. As a matter of fact, as I was kind of making some notes to prepare for our conversation, I was thinking about that exact same thing with the box and then the stuff that falls outside the box. And I think that the real estate market, sort of as a system, is amazingly well tuned and lubricated to deliver exactly what everybody needs in about 98% of the cases. The other 2% of the cases, though, it's not the right mechanism for doing those things. And so then what I'm getting at is, as I think about, while I really do actually believe that if you're a good real estate agent, you're probably well suited to be a great real estate, like an off-market real estate investor too, because you're used to talking directly to people and kind of negotiating with them and understanding what their situation is and whatnot. The thing that concerns me, though, like the one caveat I have, is if 98% of your time is spent in the box, it's I just have to assume it's got to be super difficult to just magically take that hat off at one point and then suddenly put on this creative hat and then just see the world from a different perspective. I just think anybody doing anything 98% of the time in a certain way, it's not easy to just turn that off and start thinking a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And I think I think you've got a good point there. And it is hard to do. And it's hard to do both. I think that if you don't, well, let me put it this way. What I think you can do is I think you can put yourself in positions to make that easier or to make that more likely to happen, whether that is, I don't know, joining an investor group or having a mastermind group with either friends or an actual organized mastermind group like the way you and I had officially originally met.
Yeah.
To put you into that mindset more often, right? And you're gonna have to come off that 97% or 98%. Like it's eventually gonna have to skew the other way at least a little bit if you're gonna make any sort of progress. I think the other way you do it, and this is the way I was originally taught, and it's not necessarily, I'm not saying this is the way for everyone to do it. One of the ways I was taught is like, hey, if you build your core business big, and part of building a real estate business is you also build a bigger network, right? And instead of doing it through your work hours and all your mindset is find someone to partner with, right? And help someone else get started where potentially you can be the financial side of that and part of the mindset, if you will, but that becomes their 98%, or in my world, I would always call it 80, their 80%, based on the 80-20 rule. And so find someone else who can make this thing that would be outside of your 20%, find someone else who can make it their thing, their main thing, if you will, and partner with them and maybe grow a business with them that way. That was kind of one of the ways I was taught to think about this as well, is to not to try to do it all on your own, because it is hard to get out of your kind of your main mindset, especially if it is, produces a pretty good income and helps you run a good business. Not all of us can be like Elon Musk and have a couple different multi-billion-dollar businesses that we're the CEO of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is for sure. So I wanted to pivot a little bit. I wonder if this might even bring us back to some of the same things on my mind, but I've seen something through one of your Facebook pages or websites, but called the iBuyer Advantage. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah. So the iBuyer Advantage is it's just a little ebook I wrote. Here's the deal. I mentioned earlier too, when you asked me about kind of the elephant in the room, and I tend to see things a little bit different than most real estate agents. Because I just don't feel threatened. I'm always okay with things changing and needing to adapt. And so one of the things that really scares a lot of real estate agents is the change in technology from companies like Zillow, Opendoor, OfferPad, Redfin. Of course, right now, they've all stopped buying. And so real estate agents as a whole, if you will, want to kind of celebrate a win, if you will, because they think this is a win somehow. But what I was trying to do with that book is to convey to them there's another way to view what's happening in our industry. There's another way to view disruption. And it doesn't have to just be that I'm getting disrupted in something, somebody is taking something from me, but rather learn to use these companies and these changes, ultimately these changes in consumer behavior, as a way to help grow your business and to help fortify your business. And so that's all that, so that ebook is really just my thought process around using what is changing in our world today, inside of our I'll call it our real estate agent world, and what is trying to disrupt us, and how to take that, use that to our advantage rather than being disrupted.
Yeah. So what would you say then is sort of the gist of how you do that in this case, or like the point of view that you have with that is like, how are you saying that could be? Because I have a guess of what the answer is, and I think it's very much probably the same way that I'm thinking about it. from an investment perspective, but I just want to check. So how are you feeling like that can be the right advantage for real estate agents?
So there's a couple layers to that, right? So number one is find out what it is what is it that they really want, and then what is it that they don't want, and how can you help each other with those two things, right? So as an example, like these iBuyers they don't buy everything. Like they have very limited buy boxes of what they're willing to buy, what they're willing to risk on, and what they're not. Find out what's important to them. There's different ways to work with these companies. Some of them, you can use them to your advantage by, as an example, if you have a listing coming up or a client who is in the buy box, right? Their home fits the buy box, but, and they are pressed for time, or there's a way to sell to one of these iBuyers. You can still get paid, probably not as much as you normally would. However, you won't have the costs that you normally would either, and turn them into their next purchase a little bit faster. Or people who need to sell faster because of relocation, or perhaps it's just, in my mind, this is going to sound crazy, although I don't think it's crazy, is sometimes it's literally just the best thing for them because they can have their money. It's virtually the same thing that we can get them on the MLS, and it's tomorrow or in 10 days or 15 days, whatever it is they say that they want, right? So I think it's really nothing more than a matter of helping our clients find all of the solutions out there, as opposed to just the normal traditional, I'll call it real estate agent MLS solution. There's more than just that. And I think these companies are one of those things. So how do we use them as a tool in our tool belt as real estate agents to help those people who trust us to help them? Another way to do it is they're a source of business. They could actually be source of business because, as I said a minute ago, they don't buy everything. So find out what they're doing with the leads of the homes they're not going to buy, that they're literally just turning down right away because they don't fit the criteria. Is there a way to work with those people? Maybe from a referral perspective. So, there's a few different ways to work with these companies. And so those are a couple of the ones that just kind of come to mind.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think there is some alignment there with what I've been thinking about too, just from the investment side. What I feel like I do and what I teach other people to do is be like a professional acquirer of real estate. So my main client is a seller. Now the client or the seller doesn't think of themselves as my client, right? They don't think of me as a service provider they've hired. They just think of me as somebody who's buying their property. But when I think about it from the perspective of the seller, which to me, the whole thing is oriented around the seller. From the perspective of the seller, there is a spectrum of experiences. And so I think in real estate, we think a lot about outcomes in terms of like how much money did I get and how fast did it go. But there's also this other spectrum, the experiential spectrum. And what I don't know if it's that I like about the iBuyer thing, but the thing that makes me not be concerned about the iBuyer thing and maybe even a little bit happy about it is that as the one end of the spectrum gets more and more and more, automated, technology oriented, one size fits all type of approach, it emphasizes the difference, but even more and more and more between that and what's at the other end of the spectrum, because I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I'm the extremely relational, sit down, if we need to meet an hour a week for the next 6 months, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to absolutely know your dog's name and how old your kids are and like everything in between, as well as everything about your actual real estate situation too. And so to me, I guess what I'm saying is if there was like a contrast knob on the real estate market, like the iBuyers just came and just kind of grabbed the contrast knob and just turned it way up so that it makes the different options more and more clear as to how different they are. And it doesn't mean that more people are going to find the experience that I am able to provide more advantageous or more attractive or anything like that. But it is certainly going to make it more distinctly different. I don't know if that makes any sense, or if that relates at all to how you're seeing it kind of for real estate agents too.
Yeah, I think, here's the other thing. So at the core of this, here's what I really think. Because a lot of people will go, they don't have my perspective from a standpoint of we've had them here in the Phoenix market for 5.5 years. I mean, Open Door closed their first transaction August of 2014. So it's been a while. They do, I say they, I'm kind of lumping them all together. These iBuyers buy hundreds and hundreds of houses every month here in the Phoenix market. And they sell hundreds of homes every month in the Phoenix market. So they're a big part of what we do. We've seen them go from this startup, of doing a deal here and there and, having like 12% in service fees and, on top of their lower, their offer that wasn't very good to begin with, to having a real streamlined process and not like their fees are really pretty much in line with that of a real estate transaction, a traditional real estate transaction, I should say. And so I see these happening, and what I know is this, like they are providing an option to the consumer and turning the volume up on the fact that option is available. And there's a certain number. Here's what I firmly believe, and you just will never be able to convince me of otherwise. You probably believe the same thing based on your experience, is that there's just a certain number of people who will sign up for that option. That's what real estate agents struggle with, I think, as a whole, is that they think that every single seller wants the same thing, and that's the most amount of money, period. Mm-hmm. Everybody believes that the seller wants the most amount of money no matter what. And that's not always the case. It doesn't mean that they don't want to get the most amount of money also. What I'm saying is they don't always prioritize that number one over, say, convenience or certainty or fill in the blank of whatever's most important to them. So I think what I tend to do, a lot of real estate agents will tell you that, well, it's bad because they're going to get less money. Well, okay, yeah, they're going to get less money, but they're also going to get it tomorrow or next week. And they're also not going to have somebody walk through their home. And if that's what they want, then that's what they should have. And so I think at the end of the day, no matter what these companies have done is they've responded to something in the marketplace for consumers that wasn't being met by my group of people as real estate agents and your group of people as real estate investors. There was a certain level that we weren't meeting a need. And so now they've come in and done that. And here's why I think it's good. It forces us to get better at what we do. And it doesn't mean that it's going to get rid of you and me. It means that you and I have to do better. And that's not to say that we're not both doing well and, or doing right by people, because I think we've always done right by people. Yet it's forced us to go, how do we do this better? How do we serve our clients at a higher level? And most importantly, kind of meet the needs or the demands of the consumer today versus what we think they need just because that's the way it's always been done or that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah. I really, really, really like that, that perspective. I used to run a branding agency for about 10 years. And so I spent a lot of time at that point, like philosophizing around brand and differentiation and positioning and stuff like that. And one of the things that just always drove me nuts was sort of the idea that we honestly think that we are the right fit for everybody. And we want to like talk everybody else into thinking that we are the right fit for everybody. And that's just simply not the case. And it's totally okay that it's not the case, right? We're designed for a certain, to kind of deliver a certain outcome with a certain experience. We're a good fit for some people, not so great of a fit for others. And so I totally, absolutely agree with what you were just saying, is that it's just not our strike zone to be that way. So we just need to be extra good in the thing that really is our strike zone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Yeah. Okay. So when you think about really great real estate agents, and I guess let's focus on agents maybe more than like people who are trying to build a brokerage company or a brokerage business. But when you think about great real estate agents, what are some of the traits that sort of jump out at you as the themes among some of the most quality people in that role?
I think the most quality people, or some of those themes are, number one, is people who are driven. Like I've always said, I shouldn't say I learned this from a friend a couple of years ago. I'm never going to, I won't drag anybody to the starting line. So these people get themselves to the starting line, right? They don't need to be told what to do. Like when you become a real estate agent, yes, there's some mechanics and you have to learn some things, but you don't need to be told to show up and learn, right? So I think there's a lot of self-starting that is involved in being a really great real estate agent. I think that one of the other common themes I see is people who truly want to help other people. I think that coming from a place of contribution and giving back to other people is a common theme I see among great real estate agents. I also see people they have a lot of grit, right? They can get kicked in the teeth and get back up. In fact, a lot of them are getting kicked in the teeth right now in 2020, right? And it's going to help them keep going. Like they will get past it. They will keep going. So I think those are some of the very common themes. And I would say to add another one would be someone who's very teachable. Like they're willing to not know everything and to learn from, whether that be from people or from experiences or from a workbook, right? Like just willing to learn.
Yeah, that is a great list. And I didn't tell you in advance I was going to ask you that question, and I had no idea what you're going to say, but deep down, I had this guess that probably everything you would say in that answer would be something that I would look at and go, I think that is a great success trait of a thoughtful real estate entrepreneur as well. And I absolutely do. All of those things you just mentioned, I think are totally transferable, which is now maybe I'm doing confirmation bias here, Kevin, but I feel like I'm trying to build in my mind this argument that great real estate agents probably, if with some like a little adaptation of thinking in certain situations, probably have a lot of the same, some of the skills that would set them up really well to be successful in real estate investing, if they have that interest or that passion.
I 100% believe that to be true. I believe one of the things that's great about the real estate business in general is that it's a great training ground for any business. I got into real estate wanting to be all about real estate. I fell in love with business while I was in real estate. Meaning like the whole, like putting that whole, all of those pieces of the puzzle together to operate a business. That's the thing that really gets me going these days. And so, yeah, absolutely. I would say, obviously I've never been a real estate investing entrepreneur or I would never have called myself an investor as a loan title. I would say I've made some investments, but I wouldn't call myself an investor. And I would agree. If you said to me, hey, Kevin, what do you think it's going to take to be really good at real estate investing as an entrepreneur? What would it take? I guess I probably would name those things as well. Like that would definitely, those would be on the list. Because I think those are transferable, right? I think if you can't do those things anyways, like you're going to have a hard time succeeding regardless. And if you can, the world's probably your oyster. It's just a matter of learning the different things, like the technicalities, if you will, inside what it's like to say, run your business versus say, run my business.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like all the things you just said there. The one that really I latched onto probably the most strongly was the one about helping others. And a couple of weeks ago, we're recording this as the world is changing rapidly with the coronavirus pandemic, and maybe 3 or so weeks ago, I started having this really kind of strong feeling that all of a sudden here we're finding ourselves in what I've been calling now the perfect storm of ethical opportunity for real estate entrepreneurs who, because exactly that point of helping others, because I believe that probably just with the economic effects of everything that's going on, there are going to be a whole bunch more people who are going to have new sets of problems, and maybe even frankly weird sets of real estate problems that are going to need some not one size fits all, not just right off the shelf, kind of out of the box help and solutions. And so I think that if you have that trait of wanting to help others, and you're kind of good at having an open mind and asking good questions and things like that, that you're really well suited to help people, especially coming into this sort of the new world of business and life and real estate.
I couldn't agree more. I was on the phone with with a good friend of mine who actually owns a marketing company in real estate, and also is an investor, probably owns 75 or 80 different rental properties. The day I know the day. It was Thursday, March 12th. I know that because it was the day I decided to postpone our big event. It was the day I decided to close my office and tell everyone they couldn't work from the office anymore. And I'll never forget, I'm standing outside my house talking to him. His name's Frank. And I just said, I think, Frank, I don't know if it's going to be in 6 months or a year, but whatever, we're going to look back on this day and this time, and like what's going on right now is going to, unfortunately, because in his world too, he deals mostly with real estate agents, and as do I. Unfortunately, it's going to break a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of people who probably file bankruptcy because of this, and there's probably going to be a lot of people who get rich from this. And I think there's going to be a lot of room for people to get rich from an ethical opportunity, like you just mentioned, because there are so many people that are going to end up in a tight spot. I mean, there's always a certain amount of people there anyways, but when you have the squeeze put on like we've had put on in this country in the last 30 days and for however much longer this lasts, that just creates more opportunity to help people. And I believe you can, I firmly believe you can simultaneously help people, do good for people, and find an opportunity to create something can turn into income / investment / something of value, whether now or in the future.
Yeah, I think so too. And it feels weird to say like, I'm excited about the upcoming period, right? Because it's already difficult and it's probably only going to get more difficult. But if your business is about kind of creating value, I think there's just going to be a lot more at bats, so to speak, to go out and create value in the world.
Totally agree.
As as a person then who works, I mean, I know, like you said, you're not driving people around and showing them properties, but you are in the business of ultimately helping buyers buy properties, ultimately helping sellers sell them, maybe just taking one at a time, like with buyers. Moving into this new era here, what are some of the things that you feel like, because there's a lot of buyers listening to this right now, maybe not necessarily retail primary residence type buyers, but certainly investment type buyers as well. What are some of the things that are on your mind right now that buyers need to be doing to be, prudent about moving forward with acquisitions now?
Well, I think number one is gosh, that's such a hard question in a lot of ways. I know it's simple, but it's also, to me, it's, there's a lot of layers. I think number one is, and this is just going to sound so obvious, is not getting into a place of too much leverage and too much overextension. I think one of the things that has kind of scared me and also helped, I didn't think about this earlier when we were talking about it, helped me to not get as far into the investment side, as I know some people that have done it from an extreme leverage standpoint, and they're, the squeeze gets put on them and it's twice as bad as the rest of us. And so I think not doing that, I think it's always prudent not to get too far leveraged, although we all have our own appetite for risk. I know I'm not risk adverse by any means. But I think making sure that we're not too far out of bounds when it comes to that stuff. I think the other thing is just kind of what you and I were just talking about, which is not looking at things through the same lens you always have. I don't believe finding an investment today has to look like it looked like yesterday. I don't think it has to look like 20% down, or, it doesn't, I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't have to look any one way. It can look a million different ways. Like the way we would always teach it when we were teaching the Outback, which is when you can get two people to agree to help each other get what they want, like that's all that it takes, right? And everything else doesn't matter. As long as it's legal and ethical, nothing else matters. So I think we're going to just approaching things from what are my possibilities and how can I do this with the least amount of exposure? Should things get worse is always a good way to look at things, especially now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Yeah. Cause it's changing quickly. And I think then for a lot of buyers, probably, the gut or like the knee jerk reaction is like, well, pause. Right. But what concerns me about pausing is that if the engine of your business is acquisition, right? And again, that's different if you're just, buying a home for yourself to live in. That's not necessarily the engine of your business. But if you are an investor and the engine of your business is buying property or doing deals, you can pause for a while, but pretty soon, like when things kind of start running again, you're going to be starting from zero, and the engine's going to be cold, and that concerns me too. So I feel like there's this really delicate balance as an active investor buyer to find a way to keep moving forward, but obviously to be doing it with your head on a swivel kind of, and just being aware that the ground is moving and changing beneath you. And what are some of the ways you can, protect yourself in there? And then, so what about the seller side of this equation? I'm guessing that, your teams are probably receiving a lot of questions from sellers like, okay, either now is probably the best time or the worst time to sell. What do you think I should do? What's your kind of collective opinion on that?
Oh, I think the reality is everyone's scenario is different. I think what I would tell people who are considering selling is there are still people who are buying. Even the people that are just looking to acquire a primary, I say just, like people who are actually looking to acquire a primary residence. Those transactions are still going on. Don't get me wrong. There's less happening today than there was 3 or 4 weeks ago. But it is still going on. There is, a lot of activity out there. I think one of the things that is lucky or fortunate, maybe is the right word, during this time that was not true in the 2006, 7, 8, 9 kind of meltdown, is that this wasn't caused from an economic crash. Right? This is a health thing, right? That then has caused the economy to slow down or almost stop at this point. But when we look at the housing market, like the housing market actually was the initial cause of what happened last time. The housing market now has been super healthy. Not even healthy, I would say thriving in a lot of ways. Like here in the Phoenix area, as an example, we had going into March 1st, we literally had 42% fewer homes for sale this March than we did last March.
Wow.
So there's extremely low amount of supply and a high amount of demand. So even though the demand has dropped off, there's still a healthy amount of demand compared to the amount of supply that's available for sale. And so if you're a seller today, what I would tell you is, yes, things are different. We've got to be cautious, right? We've got health concerns. We've got a lot of different concerns. That the financing landscape is changing almost daily. And yet there are still transactions going on, and I think it's okay. Or I should say, I think that we're going to be okay. You still can sell your home. Like this is the thing I love about real estate, or I love about our industry, is that no matter how good or bad things are, people always need to buy and sell real estate for different reasons, right? There's always going to be people who need a bigger home because their family has expanded. Unfortunately, there's always going to be divorces. There's going to be deaths. There's going to be job transfers. There's going to be a lot of different things that prompt people to move, no matter how good or bad the market is. And so there's always an opportunity to buy or sell. It's about, do you have to, or is it optimal? If you have when you're, say you take a job transfer and you got to move across the country, well, like the chances are, like you don't get to wait it out. Most likely, you're gonna just have to sell when it happens. And if you have the ability to wait something out, then that's great. But I think the reality is that's something about the real estate industry most people don't really get, is regardless if it appears to be quote unquote good or strong, which usually is a seller's market in the public's eyes, or if it's quote unquote bad or a buyer's market bad in the public's eyes, there's still an opportunity because people are always buying and selling real estate no matter what. It has never stopped completely.
Yeah. Yep. That's good. I feel very much the same way. And if you can be resilient enough in terms of adapting how you do what you do, there'll always be plenty to do, I think. Yeah, that's cool.
Totally. Yeah, it's like one of my mentors early on taught me, is like, the reality is the market never determines whether or not you can be successful. The only thing it has to say so in is in your strategy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so well said. Yeah. And strategies will be adapting here. I mean, starting pretty much right now. I mean, they'll have to. So hopefully the agile people who are willing to, yeah, I mean, maybe unlearn some things that they've done, learn some new things, but be willing to adapt a little bit, I think are set up to succeed and thrive.
Totally.
So let me wrap it up with one totally different, like non-timely kind of question. That's something I think that you and I probably have a lot in common. I was reading an article about you actually before this, kind of get in the right frame of mind, and it brought up abundance mentality, and that's something it's big in my mind as well. And I think even Genius Network, where you and I met, it's sort of a abundance mentality is sort of a big part of the framework there. Even so, what does it mean to you, abundance mentality?
Ooh, that's a good one. What does it, I think it's just at the end of the day, it means there's enough. There's always enough. There's no matter what, there's always enough. It doesn't matter if we're talking about real estate deals and transactions, or if we're talking about money, or we're talking about ways to make money, or we're talking about insert anything that anybody ever has needed. I think there's always enough. If there's always enough, for me, that's motivation to go, okay, great. Then I just need to, if I don't currently have enough, I just need to look at things differently in order to, I got to have a different viewpoint in order to see it. And I guess that's how I look for it. I guess that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. To me, like my own simple kind of personal definition of abundance mentality is that, like, for me to win, the other person doesn't have to lose, or vice versa. And that if it does seem like that, then we're just looking at it from the wrong angle. We need to kind of walk around the scenario and see it from a different perspective, because I think there's almost always a way to align the interests of different people so that everybody's getting what they want.
Yeah, totally. I think that, going back to something I learned from another early mentor of mine, and kind of a guy who owned a leadership and development training company, is you can have win-win. Like, it doesn't have to be win-lose. Win-win can happen. And I think win-win can only happen if you have an abundance mindset, or a thought process of abundance. If you don't have a thought process of abundance, then everything's zero sum. Everything you look at in life is zero sum. And I don't think it is. I think there's always a way to find a win-win.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Kevin, this is super fun chatting, and I know a nice wide range of things we covered, from, like the business of being a real estate agent or growing a brokerage, to investing and lots of other stuff in between. So if people want to learn more about you, what is the best way to do that?
I guess, gosh, that's a good question. I didn't think about that before we got on here. I would say, if you're a real estate agent, probably the best way is to either check out our Facebook group called Next Level Agents, or to check out our real estate podcast called The Kevin and Fred Show. I'm active on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that. But those are probably the easiest places to find me at, is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or our podcast.
Okay, excellent. And your last name, you got two F's in the middle there, right?
Yep, 2 F's.
All right. Kevin, thank you so much for spending time with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, man, it was my pleasure today, Jeff. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Sleaze Free Real Estate Investing. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kevin Kauffman as much as I did, and I hope you learned as much from that episode as I learned just by conducting it with Kevin. I really believe that the more we can understand, relate to, empathize with, and learn to collaborate with real estate agents, the better we can be as real estate entrepreneurs ourselves. Please, again, if you wouldn't mind, do yourself a big favor, do us a big favor by hitting the subscribe button in your podcast app. That way you'll know the second the next episode is released, and it really helps iTunes to show our show to other people and help us get discovered. Remember, there are show notes for today's episode at www.thoughtfulre.com/E33. Until next time, this is Jeff from the Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur signing off. Hey there, fellow thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs. Before we dive into today's episode, I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge that we are in times right now that give new meaning to the word unprecedented, but it also creates incredible opportunity for those of us who do business ethically like we do as thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs. I recorded a special training video that I'd like for you to go watch. Go to sellerrelationsmastery.com/free, because in this video, I explain to you why this is the absolute perfect storm of ethical opportunity for people who do business the way we do. And because the times that we find ourselves in are unprecedented, that calls for unprecedented actions and decisions and offers in other ways. And so I was inspired by what I saw other leaders doing, and I've decided to offer you my signature real estate entrepreneurship course, a 6-module video course with worksheets as well, for absolutely free for a limited time. Because right now, you've probably got some extra time on your hands. You might have some extra concerns about money, and you need some strategies to shore that situation up. You might be wanting to take this time and invest it in your own self-development, and I want to support that, because the world needs right now and in the very near future our talents as thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs more than they ever have. So go to sellerrelationsmastery.com/free right now. Watch the training video. Download this idea from me about why right now is the time when you are called to serve and the time that you have to create even more stability in your own life and in your own family. On that page, you can sign up for the free course. Don't miss this opportunity, and I can't wait to see you inside. Now on to the episode.
Thanks for listening to Sleaze Free Real Estate Investing. Remember, solve the person to unlock the deal, and solve the financing to unlock the profits.